Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Eden Strader and today we're going to talk about how to know if you're a lesbian. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, and truly like how I built my platform on TikTok is talking about how to realize you're a lesbian. And for the men who are suffering from voluntary celibacy, who are inevitably going to be in the comments like, please boost my content, I beg of you. No, but I think realizing you're a lesbian in this day and age is obviously easier than it used to be. We have so many resources online to identify our sexuality and try to figure it out. But that being said, I am of the generation, could not sound older than when I say that. Like, I was still raised in a very like comp-centered culture. Also grew up Mormon. I'm a millennial, sue me. So like I really did have to deconstruct a lot of things, and while in hindsight I can identify that I was attracted to women, like I did not have the verbiage or the examples of identity that I needed in order to know that. And before you hop in here as well being like, me, this is why she got divorced. It's not. I didn't realize I was a lesbian until years later. But a huge identifying part of that was the Lesbian Masterdoc. And one thing I'll say about the Lesbian Masterdoc is that it is a little outdated. It's not 100% accuracy. That doesn't exist. Sexuality is fluid. Labels are a cultural thing. And another thing to note is that you like don't need to label yourself unless you feel like that's going to be helpful. Sexuality is truly a spectrum at the end of the day. So like while things like this are helpful, this is all so nuanced. Actually doesn't matter at all in the scheme of things if you identify as a lesbian. But in case that's helpful to you, as it was to me, we're gonna talk about it. I think one of the biggest things to note as well as we go into this is that when it comes to lesbianism or even bisexuality or pansexuality, decentering men as a woman or non-men is seriously one of the best things you will ever do for yourself. And I think processing this first part, which is compulsory heterosexuality, and starting the journey on decentering men will change your life. I would almost argue even more if you're someone who is attracted to them. So keep that in mind as well. But let's go ahead and start on page 2, where we talk about compulsory heterosexuality, which is how a lot of us ended up dating men, staying with men. I, for one, am the type of lesbian that doesn't necessarily like throw up when kissing men. And so when I had no idea what queerness was or how it worked, and I was only shown heterosexuality from a cultural and romantic standpoint, I thought it was normal. I thought it was fine. I also think there's such a culture of hating your husband or boyfriend that I truly would talk to my friends who are hetero and be like, oh, they feel the same way about their partners as I do. Like, we're good. We were not good. Anyway, okay, let's go ahead and just read off. It says, compulsory is the opposite of optional. Compulsory heterosexuality is exactly what it sounds like. Being straight is something our culture tries to force on us. It affects people of every gender, but it's mostly been studied as something that affects women. This is because compulsory heterosexuality easily ties in with the misogyny that causes women's sexualities and even identities to be defined by our relationships with men. Women are taught from a very early age that making men happy is our job. So much to unpack with that, especially if you grew up religious or conservative or both. We're supposed to be pretty for men. We're supposed to change the way we talk to men so they will take us more seriously. We're supposed to want a man's love more than anything else. Our magazines are full of sex tips on how to better please men. We literally cannot exist in public without men loudly grading us on how well we're pleasing them visually. Y'all are icky. And if you're a good man, you won't be offended by this. So what happens if you want to be with women? What happens if you're not attracted to men at all? When you're trained from childhood to see romantic/sexual relationships with men and only men as major life goals, how do you separate that from what you want? Compulsory heterosexuality is the voice in my head that says I must really be het even when I'm in love with a woman. Compulsory heterosexuality is what forces lesbians to struggle through learning the difference between what you've been taught you want, being with men, and what you do want, being with women, which is why so many lesbians have dated men at some point. Compulsory heterosexuality is very similar to heteronormativity. The assumption that straight is the default. We're trained from birth to believe that we will find someone of the other binary, fall in love, have sex, etc. In a million tiny ways, we're taught that only relationships with the other binary gender are valid. And if you're not one of the binary genders, this can be even more confusing. Compulsory heterosexuality is built into you from the moment you're born into this time and place, and it takes a long time to dismantle it. 1. I think that compulsive heterosexuality really does truly like go hand in hand and is very synonymous with centering men. Decentering men is something that you are going to have to take a lifetime to unpack. I still unpack it even as a lesbian. Unsure, TBD, stay tuned on if that's like a end goal that you can ever achieve. I'm convinced the journey will never be done. I don't think we live in a society that is built for men to be completely decentered. Men, despite being the more emotional of the genders, are sadly in charge for the most part. in our culture even still. We can get into the pink tax, we can get into gender inequality, we can talk about the pay gap. There's so many things that we can talk about. However, you have to decenter men to, one, be a woman fully in her power in this culture and lifetime. Two, if you want to have healthy relationships with men. And three, if you want to truly figure out your sexuality and or end up identifying as a lesbian. That is a journey you're going to have to start. So the next thing they say on page 4 is, how do I know if I'm a lesbian? If you're questioning if you're a lesbian, it's way more important to ask yourself if you can truly be happy with a man if you're attracted to them. Ask yourself if you want to have a healthy, fulfilling relationship with men. You can be attracted to men or not know if you are because of compulsory heterosexuality, and it doesn't mean you want to be with them. Attraction is supposed to feel good. If being in relationships with men isn't appealing to you, if you can't truly see yourself ending up in happy relationships with men, or your attraction to men makes you uncomfortable, you could be a lesbian. I will say though, I think this is also where like the Lesbian Masterdoc can be kind of controversial in the fact that like a lot of things that just got said can be said to women that are attracted to men that have had really traumatic relationships with men, maybe haven't seen a lot of good men, met a lot of good men. That doesn't mean that you're a lesbian. However, I think a good first step when it comes to identifying your sexuality is if you're asking yourself constantly if you're a lesbian. Like, turns out there are straight women. Who knew? They don't really question those things. Like, they're not constantly thinking about being with women, kissing women, falling in love with women. I know. I too thought that was the case. Turns out no. While these questions are important, I think there can be a crossover between lesbians and women that just have had really bad experiences with men, which is why like this document as a whole is very important. Very important to take it with a grain of salt. It's also important to do your own research. So here are kind of some like questions that come up when people are trying to figure out if they're a lesbian, and we're on page 5 of this document. But I like fictional men / male celebrities. Yeah, baby, it's because they're not real. And that's a symptom of comp het, right? So they're completely unobtainable crushes, except for mine on Harry Styles, because it's impossible to ever be with that person. So you're like truly getting to have a crush on this person while avoiding the romance and intimacy. It's kind of like when straight girls have a girl crush or men have a boy crush. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gay. So you having a crush on a celebrity that you're never gonna date nor have any intimacy with does not mean you're not a lesbian. But I think I've liked men before. I really am just gonna read like one sentence from this that I think is very important. Lots of lesbians have dated or had genuine relationships with men before realizing they were lesbians, and that doesn't make them any less of a lesbian. Identifying your sexuality is like a right now thing. Like, sexuality can change, it can evolve. You're not declaring that you're a lesbian and then being like, and that's it forever. We don't know where we're gonna be in a million years, and the past is the past. So you're a lesbian right now. Like, we can always only speak for ourselves in this moment. And like, I have had, I will say like one man probably that I was like truly deeply in love with. And that doesn't invalidate the fact that like I'm a lesbian. I happened to love a man once. That doesn't happen anymore. There's also something so important to know about the fact that like you can find men attractive and not be attracted to them. You can also love men very deeply and not be attracted to them. And like, when I look back on that man that I was like very in love with, like that was very much an emotional thing and not a physical thing, which is where we start diving into like romanticism versus sexuality. But let's not even go there yet. They kind of go through another set of signs of compulsory heterosexuality and whatever. I think what's most important though is like what they start on page 10, where they start kind of deconstructing attraction to men. So here are some like symptoms that could lead you down the path to lesbianism. Number 1, deciding which guys you're going to be attracted to, right? So like, maybe you have a list of impossible criteria in your head that men must meet, and if they meet them, you're like, nice, yes, I'm attracted to them. Or maybe you're constantly testing your attraction to men, right? This is something that hits me like a train about once a year, where comp het creeps in and is like, maybe you're bi. Then I test it and I either hook up with a man or kiss a man and I'm repulsed. No offense, you guys. I'm like, damn, she got me once again. Thankfully, I think those days are behind me, but one can only hope. I like the idea of being with a man, but anytime a man makes a move on me, I get incredibly uncomfortable. I do not like the reality of men, only the idea of being with men. I can always find an idea not to date men. I develop attraction to a guy after another friend has expressed attraction to him. I get jealous of female friends' relationships with guys. We've all We have all had some homoerotic friendship with a girl that maybe you clock while you're in it, but usually it's hindsight's 2020, where like you're always jealous of their boyfriends. Girl, that's not normal. Confusing strong emotional connection / dependency with a man for romantic feelings. Not the same, turns out. Choosing to be attracted to a guy, not choosing to act on it, being able to like flip your attraction on and off like a switch, not normal. Well, it is normal, but for lesbians. You're way more excited about women than men. That's an obvious one. Only being attracted to guys who are gender non-conforming or feminine in some way, but alternatively, guys maybe that are like super hyper masculine, because you like feel like you need to check into that. Your fantasies around men are always like faceless, nameless men. You lose all attraction or get extremely uncomfortable if there are any implications that they might like you back. This was a huge one for me. I liked men until they liked me for the most part, and then I would get icked out so quickly. You mistake the desire for male approval as attraction. You don't necessarily want a relationship with men, but you want men to want a relationship with you. This, yes, is a common sign of lesbianism. It's me describing symptoms, not a sickness. But I think this is, again, kind of goes into this idea of deconstructing the male gaze, because like that can apply even to bi girls, straight girls, pan girls, whatever. So normal to want men to be attracted to you based on the ways that we were raised. You need to deconstruct that whether or not you're a lesbian. Reading your anxiety, discomfort, nervousness, or combativeness around men as attraction to them. Confusing your anxiety around men for butterflies or feeling flustered. Something to think about. You wish you weren't attracted to men and you wish you were a lesbian. Obviously, we all know a straight girl or two that has said this, but like if you're thinking about it 24/7, let's say that you do have relationships with men, right? So like maybe you are dreading what it feels like to have a domestic future with them, looking forward to an idealized version of that, maybe like a version that you've never really seen, never really like met a man that you can really picture in that role. You have every reason to be happy in your relationship with men, but you aren't, being repulsed by the dynamics of most / all life male and female relationships. Again, we're talking in binaries, which are fake. Please give me a little grace on that. I don't believe gender is a binary, but we're talking in hetero terms, unfortunately. You think you're afraid of commitment because no relationship, no matter how great the guy, feels quite right, and you drag your feet when it comes time to escalate it. This was a huge thing for me. I was just ticking boxes when it came to dating men. Your relationships with them are devoid of passion. I had no idea that people actually felt physically passionate about their male partners. Like that, that was mind-blowing to me. Turns out I'm not asexual. I just didn't like men. Wishing that your boyfriend was less interested in romance and or sex with you so that you could just hang out as pals. Thinking you're really in love with guys, but you're always able to like get over them in record time. There's a lot of things when it comes to like intimacy with men that I would just suggest reading. It's on page 14. But like the TLDR of it all is just that like it's not enjoyable. You don't look forward to it at best, and at worst it's like disgusting to you. There's a lot that goes into that. Let's talk about early interest in women though, because I think that's really important, and in hindsight something that could have flagged how queer I was much sooner had I been aware of it. But like I was the little Mormon kid going to my parents being like, hey, is it normal to think about kissing your friends? And they were like, yeah, it's the devil. Perfect. He loves me. He is up here a lot. Anyway, some little examples, maybe something to keep an eye out for. Being unusually competitive, shy, or eager to impress women. Butterflies when you touch them, or if you don't want to touch them, because I think that's like another thing too, is I know a lot of lesbians that were like growing up, I was always kissing my friends, or I was getting drunk and kissing them. I wouldn't touch my friends with a 10-foot pole, and that's because I would get little butterflies, and I thought it was Satan. So I wouldn't hug my friends, I wouldn't hold their hand. I was in like the girls' locker room, just like in Victoria's Secret, trying not to look at anything. Was so freaked out by the physical response I would have to being around women or touching women that I did not, which is also a huge flag. Having an unusually close friendship growing up with another girl was different and special in a way that you can't articulate. We've all been there, right? Like you've had a falling out with a friend that truly was more dramatic than any breakup ever could be. Something to think about. If you're constantly talking about your girl crushes, or like for me when I was growing up, I would be like, if I was a boy, I would love to make out with Blake Lively. Obviously my childhood crush didn't age well, but give me a break. If I was a man, I would love to be married to Blake Lively. I literally never shut up about Blake Lively, specifically that scene in Sisterhood of Traveling Pants where she's pouring water all over herself. Imagine watching that as a like 15-year-old closeted lesbian in the Mormon church. One of the last ones they say is, yes, like feeling guilty and uncomfortable in locker rooms. Yep. And you'll probably be convincing yourself of a few things. That's thinking all straight girls feel the same. I said that all the time. Turns out no. Thinking that your interest in seeing attractive women / scantily clad women is an artificial reaction caused by the objectification of women in media. This is a really hard one for me, especially growing up super Christian, and really difficult because I had a really therapist when I was coming to terms with my sexuality where I brought up my attraction to women, and she said that. She literally was like, it's probably just a like overcorrection because like women are so sexualized in media. And I was like, seems homophobic, but okay. Really into how women look or art with women. When I came out to my siblings, they were like, yeah, no, we know. You have so many naked women in art pieces in your home. Granted, that obviously doesn't make you a lesbian, but in hindsight, I was like, no, that's so true. Being a really intense LGBTQ ally and getting weirdly emotional about homophobia, but assuming you're just a really good ally. So that was me, sobbing at Same Love by Macklemore. My 14-year-old ass, I literally remember sobbing and being like, I'm just like so happy gay people get to be happy. Girl, you want to be happy with a woman. There's like so much else that you should read about in the Lesbian Masterdoc, but I think what's, again, so important to note is that some of it is true, some of it isn't, some of it can't be true. It's opinion. That document was not written after meeting every single queer woman or queer person in this world. So there's going to be a lot of nuance in it. There's going to be a lot of give and take, and not everything said is going to apply to you. There might be things in there that is very specific to your lesbianism that is also not in there. Let's say you've come to terms with being a queer person or queer woman. My recommendation is this. I truly think that even if you are attracted to men, you should date women at some point in your life. One, we could dive into the fact that a lot of queer women regret not getting to experience that. I know that was me when I hadn't experienced women and I thought I was in a relationship I would be in forever with a man. Experiencing the queerness of it all does not validate your queerness. Let's say you are a cis woman who ends up with a cis man and you never got to experience being with women or non-binary people. That does not make you less queer. You are still queer. Let's make that perfectly clear. However, I think that there's something very specific about queer love and queer relationships that cannot be duplicated in heterosexual relationships. Our culture and our society is just so heteronormative that, sorry, men are never going to be able to love you in the way that a woman is going to love you, or love you in a way that someone who was raised as a woman would love you, or someone that has experienced womanhood in some capacity. Queer and sapphic love is so unique and so different, and there's literally nothing like it. And so I truly do think that all queer women should experience it. And like, while queer and sapphic people aren't perfect, right? Like, I started dating women thinking that they would never do me as dirty as men did. No, they do. And it's almost worse because men are dumb and women are not, for the most part. So when men hurt you, it's kind of like out of stupidity. Women hurt you, know what to do. Like, they know what they're doing. So don't go into dating women thinking it's going to be like all sunshine and rainbows. It's not. I fear there's a reason why WLW relationships, specifically your first heartbreak, send you to a home. However, I think it's really important to experience sapphic connection and love in some capacity, because let's say you do end up with a man, your standards for how that man interacts with you and treats you and shows up for you is going to be so much higher. Like, let's say, God forbid, I ever find out that I am actually attracted to men. Not manifesting that in my future. However, my standard for dating as a general concept is so much different and changed so much for the better because I have experienced sapphic love, that it would take truly a 1 in a billion man to ever even somewhat compare to that. So if you're gonna end up with a man, make sure you raise that bar. Something to think about. We've had so many incredible queer women and people and trans women, especially trans women of color, who fought so hard for our right to be able to do this. Like, the fact that I am able to sit on the internet and talk to you about being a lesbian is absolutely insane, and we owe it all to them. I know it can be scary, and I know that a lot can come up It is definitely a process. It's not always easy, but it is so worth it. And it is so exciting that you are going to get to experience this relationship with non-men and also see what it brings out in your personality and the way that you show up for partners outside of gender binaries, gender roles, and heterosexuality. So if some of this, all of this resonated, I don't know, maybe you're a lesbian. If you have any questions, leave them below. Okay, see you next time.